This video is sponsored by KnucklesOX, Crimson Manifesto, and Jelpy. We resume as the Z Fighters and Vegeta's forces land and take shelter in Kame House, planning their next moves. Thus, they are a bit jumpy and shocked when Pigero and Zeshin, still carrying the head of 13, make their way inside as well. And though both a bit wary of the android newcomer, both sides end up updating one another on what's going on. This sparks a very engaged, intense discussion, as for a bit, options seem rather limited, with enemies still increasing, and it is during the midst of this that things suddenly go quiet for Guldo, with him finally looking around to note that time is frozen for him, even though he's not holding his breath, and it's just staying like that. However, suddenly, even though he is no master of sensing ki naturally, it would be incredibly hard not to notice the massive power off in the distance, which feels like he and all his allies are there, instead of right here, where he can clearly see them, leaving the green jerkish alien unsettled and still counting at the back of his head. This time freeze has already well exceeded anything he's ever conjured. We flash over to the future timeline and finally see what is keeping Trunks. While he is finishing up his own training and helping Bulma refuel the time machine for his journey back to aid the other timeline, they are attacked by a creature who is making a bid to steal the vehicle, and so he comes to blows with a strange monster calling himself Imperfect Cell, and it is quickly turned into a fight for survival, with there being a stark advantage in the favor of the Bugman possessing a mixed and muddied ki with signatures from the Z-Fighters he'd only met in passing back in time. Then all too quickly, Trunks is pushed to his very limits and nearly killed, and Cell is able to stop time for a period of up to 30 seconds, thanks to the cells of one of Vegeta's old Frieza Force turncoat allies, giving him a chance to finally drain Trunks of his energy. Though it is in this moment that the creature remembers he is not this world's only cunning predator, nor is he his apex, as the likes of Gohan reappears from his self-imposed exile, having surveyed the battle, and allowed Trunks his shot at the creature to the very last possible moment to both tire it out and allow him to gather as much data analysis on it as possible. And now, knowing of and avoiding his trump cards, he springs his trap, first disabling the tail, from which he drains Trunks with a swift chop, before driving his foot into its gut strongly enough to send it crashing away, and out of the remnants of the city humanity has begun rebuilding. In this moment of respite, Gohan looks down to Trunks' draining form, and scoffing, very carefully gives him something, forcing him to eat it, and suddenly be reinvigorated, and even made strong from the near-death experience. Coughing and sputtering in disbelief, as he asks if that was what he thought it was, as well as wanting to know what Gohan's been doing, the older hybrid simply pointing to the new symbol adorning its attire. Since Trunks grew up in a world without someone to bear it, Gohan explains he's become the new guardian of Earth, and he determined his most logical first order of business was recultivating the sensu beans, which he's just used one of the first few for Trunks' sake. He then quickly alights himself with Super Saiyan power, and fires off after Cell, Trunks regaining the form himself and falling as well to help, as they track the diabolical beast down to a wasteland where a final clash begins, Cell getting a sizable boost from Trunks' absorbed energy, and even regenerating his tail as he tries to fend off both Golden Warriors. He ends up using his hands to trade straights, chops, and gouging swipes against Gohan, while his legs and tail are best suited to keeping Trunks and that pesky sword away, taking extra care to keep his tail intact as he knocks Trunks back, and the youth unleashes a long-range crescent of ki from his katana, and a combination of Yajirobe's Kablam Slicer and Krillin's Destructo Disc, nearly succeeding in taking the tail and Cell's head with it, if not for him dodging and letting it fly harmlessly by them, capitalizing on the distance from one enemy to double his efforts on Gohan, as he gains a second win from the elation of the challenge and rises into it, gleefully exceeding the doctor's expectations even in this lowly state. And having bought enough time to do so, he makes one last attempt at using his recharged time stop as an insurance of victory, this time cornering and trying to drain the energy of Gohan as the stronger of the duo and main source of his hatred and sense of failure. But the hybrid is still calm, already having planned for this and accounted for all variables, simply needing Trunks to follow through in the order he gave him before they re-engage in battle. So just as Cell pierces Gohan and begins to drain him, Trunks exerts highly acute ki control so his attack circles back around, successfully surprising Cell just as he holds his breath and forces him to gasp, resuming time, cutting the tail off again and allowing Gohan to capitalize, seeing him whirl around with a vicious elbow to the exact same spot in the gut he hit earlier, so devastating that it releases a shockwave and drops the bio-android to its knees, finally tired out enough to be finished off cleanly. And the new self-professed god of Earth wastes no time in doing so, in the same instant slapping his palm onto Cell's face and vaporizing him and a chunk of the earth beneath him with the force of a Super Masenko from point-blank range, ensuring not a trace is left to pull any further tricks from. In the aftermath, even as he's left exhausted along with Gohan, Trunks resolves they have to get back to the present and warn the others about Cell as well. But as he moves to return to the city, Gohan states he was meaning to talk to Trunks about that, asserting that having heard from some of the higher-ups on the food chain of deities, he's already committed a serious sacred offense, and so he cannot allow Trunks to do so again. Though Trunks is obviously not persuaded by these arguments, instead appealing to Gohan's sense of duty and justice, reminding that there is another Earth out there that needs help, even as Gohan states that his allegiance to this this earth and hurt people, one of which is Trunks, and he cannot allow him to face punishment for breaking divine law. Grimacing, Trunks reasons that in that case, Gohan will have to stop him, placing a slightly trembling hand on his katana, as he's more than aware even with the Zenkai boosting against a tired Gohan, he is still a lot stronger than him. But instead of pressing the issue, Gohan quickly relents, obviously off-put by the idea of needless violence after already having fought and taken a life that day. Gohan then sighs again and rubs his temples, holding a hand up for Trunks to wait and let him think, and thus calming him down and coming up with a compromise. Sternly asserting that he will go with Trunks. They will only warn those of the other timeline, and they must leave before an hour has passed. As a result, earning Trunks' gratitude as they then rush back towards the city. Back in the present, time resumes, and the power of Guro notice disappears, leaving him still rather shaken up, as his friends suddenly just go back to talking as if nothing else happened, as they continue floating more possible strategies, such as using the Dragon Balls to destroy their enemies, repairing Super 13, or even the idea of Piccolo reunited with Kami, and thus sacrificing the Dragon Balls. Since for him already being a lot further along in his character arc, as well as having fused twice already now instead of only once, then Namekian is a lot more open with his allies about this option, supposing such a boost would be more than enough, but would doom some of their fallen allies, or any innocents to accepting their current fates. Thus, there is more intense discussion, while Goku, notably having come with a plan of his own, is trying to calm the room and speak himself, much like Guro has begun to do, with a cacophony of noise only calming down when Zeshin and Pigero raise their voices in unison, both quite used to calming rabbles of loud kids, but still seeing the two glare at one another in the midst of this lasting unity, before the Demon School fighter then urges Guro and Goku to add whatever it is they have to say. Finally given the floor, Guro goes first, taking a deep breath and suddenly explaining the wild situation that happened to him, and suggesting that there is some kind of monster that somehow has all their powers out there and it's getting stronger. While Bird for sure and some of the less courageous members of the Dragon team seem to pay this heed, just about everyone else are skeptical at best, somewhat awkwardly turning their attention to Goku rather than the little jerk as he explains the Room of Spirit and Time, stating it as the best bet they have to get the strength they need in the time they have. Vegeta especially is fairly open to this, as the only other pure Saiyan in the room, more than being open to further training as an option. With this as their next course of action, it's generally decided that the party shall move to the lookout, since this will also decrease the likelihood that Master Roshi and Turtle are put in danger, while also allowing Piccolo to see Kami and discuss his own plan of action just in case. As this is the trend of things, I believe Zeshin will make a bid to return to Dro's lab so he can repair 13. However, Pigero and the others obviously seem hesitant to allow this, with Zeshin deciding to mention that the androids have bombs built into them, and that a remote can be made to detonate them as some leverage, though he'd only be willing to show them the schematics if they let him fix his friend up, and remove their own of course. 13 of course seconds this course of action, more than fed up with being bodiless, and so while everyone's preparing for the next individual moves, it's decided that a team of fighters will accompany Zeshin back to Dro's, as will Bulma, as her genes will be vital for such a thing, with the team ending up being Yamcha and Krillin, whilst Pigero expresses a desire to hang back with Gohan and the others to wait for if they're needed. With this settled, everyone sets off, but as they do, Guro is once again left the only one conscious, as time is frozen, though this time, he summons enough courage to go towards the monstrous power he senses in order to get some kind of proof of his wild claims, seeing him even snag one of those camera things from one of the suspicious looking piles of clothes strewn around the town he appears in. This allows Guro to bear witness to Cell's chilling reveal, though here, Imperfect Cell is more shocked to be caught in the act, and much more so that Guro can perceive him like this, as this was never accounted for by the doctor. Though feeling a bit lonely and not at all intimidated by Guro, he decides to engage the pudgy alien in telepathic conversation, thus keeping time frozen by abusing his bioengineered lung capacity. Despite his terror, Guro is able to keep this creature talking long enough to find out what it is, and even make use of the camera to blind it by snapping photos as it lunges at him, causing Cell to gasp and inadvertently fully release his time stop, allowing Guro to use his own and make a break for it. Though like with him, this is ineffective on the creature, seeing Cell only increase the ferocity of his pursuit, as Guro scrambles to flee and hide, doing its best to get away. Finally, however, Guro is cornered, and it seems as if he shall have his energy drained as well, with Cell excited to see what this will do for his current time-stopping abilities, and even gloating that it may be the key to allow him to absorb his brother and sister in a single swoop, simply freezing time and scouring the planet until he finds them to obtain perfection. However, before he can absorb Guro and carry out this scheme, something else which is affecting time makes an entrance, as Trunks' time machine makes his way back to the present, drawing Cell's attention, spooking him enough to spare Guro for now and make his retreat, while future Gohan and Trunks find Guro, offering him the relief of already knowing of and believing the great evil he has to warn about. The terrifying photo proof he has of Cell now doesn't hurt either, although now having given their warning, future Gohan is prepared to leave, aloofly giving Guro an impromptu fake name of Deva. That way he can hopefully hide his identity as much as he can, not wishing to taint himself with attachments to yet another timeline's doomed heroes, knowing the danger the slightest imbalance to his psyche poses to his guardianship. Guro, however, pleads for them to stay and accompany him back to the others, both for protection and as further evidence so he's believed, with Trunks agreeing that proper discussion is the best way to go about this. However, they can't talk it out for long, as having sensed a bit of the chaos near the end, Yamcha has been sent to instant transmission to Guro to figure out what's going on and why he left, and upon seeing Trunks, even with who he presumes is a newcomer due to future Gohan's stark difference with his present-day self, he is too excited to give them much time to explain, as he brings the trio back back to the lookout with them in order to answer Piccolo's questions about the whereabouts of Trunks, before then zipping off to rejoin the team led by Zeshin. However, future Gohan quickly breaks away from the group, not wanting to be seen by any of his immediate family members as Trunks has, while he and Gudo give their warning. Though being the one who originally taught Gohan to be sneaky in both this timeline and the future one, Pigero catches him, cornering the adult version of his best friend, and yet like Yamcha, now recognizing him instantly, as he questions who exactly he is, while forcing him into the view of everyone, thus ruining his schemes of flying low. But this is where we'll be leaving this story off for right now. I know this is a really rough cliffhanger right as the changes of the timeline are starting to kind of crash together and get into the good stuff, since we're really just now getting out of the androids arc and into the Cell stuff. Around this point though, I was just starting to need some more art / to start showing up art for the new future arc, so it also kind of made sense to stop around here, but also because I'm hoping part 11 will mirror part 5 and being a fairly long one and covering a lot. I then expect we'll see probably another slight cliffhanger in part 11, and then part 12 will officially start a whole new arc and likely get us back to shorter, more frequent parts of this story again. Shoutouts to Jocelyn, aka Valerius Vi, and MrNegative for their help on visuals, and please be sure to do all the usual YouTube stuff like liking and commenting and all that stuff because it helps me out and make sure you don't miss the next part. All that said though, nothing left to do but tell you thanks for the views and to take care of yourselves and the world around you. And as always, go beyond plus ultra, and I'll see you all next time.